Good morning, Bruchim Habayim, Morai Rabotai. We're continuing on Masechet Succah, and we are on Daf Yud Aleph, Amud Bet, the top of the Amud, the very first line. Today's Amud is being learned as a Zchut Refuah Shalema for Nisim ben Miriam, for Esther Bracha bat Chaya, for Rachel Simcha bat Nahid, that should have Refuah Shalema Be'ezrat Hashem Amen. This Amud is also being learned as a Zchut for Aliyat Neshama of Abraham ben Ezra, Ruach Hashem, Tinichiru Began Eden, should be an Aliyah for his Neshama as well. We started a very fascinating sugya, which really relates to many areas of halakha, of Ta'aseh V'lo Min Hasui. Our Mishnah in Yud Aleph Amud Aleph discussed the case that you have a vine that's grown on top of the structure of the sukkah, and you put some schach on top of it. The Mishnah says that's pasul unless you have a lot of schach, then it's going to be perhaps kasher. And if you cut off, detached the growth of this vine from where it's attached to the ground, then it's kasher. So says the Gemara, trying to explain this, Rabbi Yosef said in front of Rav Huna, and that this has to be cut off, but also has to be picked up and put back on, because if you cut it off from the ground, but you don't touch the schach, that's going to be a problem of ta'aseh v'lo min hasui, because you made it without actually touching it. You turned it into kasher, and by sukkah it says chak sukkot ta'aseh shiv'at yamim. It's one of those mitzvot that it says about it that you have to make it, and here you didn't make the schach. The schach turned to be kasher all of a sudden because you did something else, which is snipping the connection of this vine from the ground. That Rabbi Yosef said in the name of Rav. Rav Huna disagreed with him, said no, Rav holds is kasher, Shmuel is the one that holds is asur. The Gemara brought a proof for it, saying that Rav was asked a question about tzitzit, that you folded one string of tzitzit, of the fringes, and you put it inside the corners, you made the tzitzit, then you cut it, and he said it is kasher. So that's where things are holding. Machloket Rav and Shmuel, what is considered asiyah? We also explained something very important yesterday, that it's not that Rav is disagreeing with a need, a requirement of ta'aseh v'lo min hasui. He also agrees that you have to have ta'aseh, it can't be min hasui. He just disagrees, and he holds that snipping the fringes of the tzitzit by itself is the asiyah, by itself is the doing of the tzitzit. And the same would be by the schach, the snipping of the vine from the ground. It is considered the asiyah of the schach, and therefore it's kasher. And Shmuel says, no, that's not asiyah, because you didn't do anything to the schach itself. You indirectly affected the halacha of schach. So even though that you did something, that's not considered making the schach, and therefore it's pasul. So that's where things are holding. Now, the Gemara is going to ask a question on Rav. Metive, they asked the Bet Midrash Shelahem v'lo pasak rashi chutin shelahem psulin. We learned that if you have this one long string that you folded, now has 4 layers of folds, and you put it in the tzitzit, and then you snip the heads of this, the string, the fringes, the tzitziot, then, says the Braita, it is pasul. And the Gemara assumes, my love, psulin leolam. Should we say that they are always pasul? And the Gemara says, no, they're not always pasul. They're pasul until you cut it. Rav holds, until you cut it, once you cut it, it is kasher, no problem. Amar lacharav, my psulin ad shiv hatziku. Now Shmuel amar psulin leolam. Shmuel holds that no, they are pasul always. If you put them in when they were attached and then you made your knots and ties, forever it will be pasul until you completely open the whole thing and redo the ties and the knots. That's when it will be kasher. So says the Gemara, a number of the Amoraim agreed with Shmuel. Vechen Amar Levi. Levi also agreed that they're Psulin Leolam, they're going to be eternally Pasul. Vechen Amar Rav Matna, and so said Rav Matna that it's going to be Pasul in the name of Shmuel. Amar Rav Matna, Amar Shmuel, Psulin. This is, by the way, a proof that Rav Matna was a direct student of Shmuel. Amar Rav Matna, Amar Shmuel. Well, once we're at it, who is Rav Matna, by the way? A very important yidiyah about Rav Matna is that there are those who say in the history of the Amoraim that Rav Matna was the son of Rabbi Yochanan. We all remember the Gemara in Daf Hey, Masechet Brachot, that Rabbi Yochanan had 10 sons, that all of them perished, Rahman al-Islam, right? He would actually take the small bone of his 10th son that passed away, and he would go to Nichum Avelim, whenever he had to go comfort the people who had lost somebody. He would take, says, look, this is something that happens to people. I had, and he would say that he had contended with loss of 10 children, Rahman al-Islam. So what happened with Rabbi Yochanan? Did he have any sons? Right? And it's brought that he actually had an 11th son, and his name was Rav Matna. And because he felt that it was not a good mazal in Eretz Israel, or for him to have a son, he sent him from young age to Shmuel. He said, well, kol ha-melamed et ben chavero Torah ke'ilu yelado. If you teach someone else Torah, it's like you gave birth to them. And therefore, now Shmuel is going to be considered his father. And that's Rav Matna over here. I actually associated this Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky writes that maybe this is not Rav Matna the way we say it, but it's really Rav Matana. Right? It's read the same way. So why Matana? Because this became his nickname because of something that he said. The one who says that a person should be teaching Torah openly to everyone, right? That a person makes himself like midbar. Ma midbar hefker. Just like a desert is hefker, there's no ownership over desert. When a person makes himself hefker, also whoever wants to come learn, I'll teach them. So it says, mi midbar matana umi matana nachaliel. If a person makes himself midbar nitnano b'matana, the Torah is given to him b'matana. Hashem gives him a gift of the Torah. Again, this is something that we are familiar with because Moshe Rabbeinu, the Gemara says, for 40 days and nights he was up on the mountain. He was learning and forgetting, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu sees the perseverance of Moshe Rabbeinu. At the end of 40 days, Hashem gave it to him b'matana, right? So that element, it is applicable to everyone, says the Gemara. If you make yourself hefker kemidbar, you're open to teaching people, you're open to giving of yourself to other people, and then the Torah is given to him b'matana. And from there, it goes matana nachaliel machir bamot. Gemara dashes the whole thing. Who is the one that says this in the Gemara? Is Rav Matna, or says Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky, Rav Matana, because maybe, just maybe, this was the name it's brought in the name of other Amoraim, that some of them had a pet peeve, so to speak. One of the things that they became was their claim to fame, and that became kind of like a nickname for them as well. So therefore, this is something to remember. Rav Matna or Matana, Amar Shmuel. Now you understand why he was a student of Shmuel, because his father, if this is correct, then he was sent to Shmuel to be raised, to be learning by Shmuel in Bavel from Eretz Israel. So says the Gemara, Ika de Amri, there are even those who say that this was a story that Rav Matna said. Amar Rav Matna, Bedidi Ava Uvda. I had the question myself. I had made this tzitzit after I put it in. Again, it makes it much simpler. You just fold a few times, you stick it in, You could adjust everything still before you cut, right? And you make the whole thing, and then you cut it. It's beautiful, right? It's all even, even strings. So he said, I did this, and I came to Shmuel, and I asked if it's kasher. Ve'amar li psulin le'olam. He said, even if you cut it afterwards, still is pasul. It's going to be pasul forever until you open it and you redo the entire thing. It's going to be pasul. So says the Gemara, they asked in the Beit Midrash 2 bomb kashas on Rav, and as we will see, one of them at least will stick and stay as a question that's not answered. In the Gemara, one of them, the Gemara tries to answer. Metiv, they asked in the Beit Midrash, Tela'an v'achar kach pasak rashei chutin. We learned in the Braita that if you put the tzitziot in before you cut them, that means you took one fringe, one string, and you folded it, as we said before, you put it in, and you afterwards, after you make this tzitzit, you cut them. Now, according to Rav, that should be what? Absolutely kasher, because you already cut it. This is the only Braita that talks about post-cutting. Right? Beforehand, we had a question, and we said, no, that's before cutting. After cutting, it's going to be kasher, right? This one says black on white, explicitly. You put the tzitziot in, you make this, and then you cut it. Rav should definitely say that this will be kasher. There's no reason that it should not be kasher. And yet the Braita says, Pasak rashei chutin shelahen pesulin. Now, even though that you cut the rashei chutin, you cut the end of the fringes, still is going to be pasul. Ve'ot tanya gabe sukkah. That's one question. Second question is a Braita that talks about our Mishnah in Daf Yud Aleph, Amud Aleph, Masechet Succah. We learned in the Braita by Sukkah, it says, Ta'aseh velo min ha'asui. It says, Chag HaSukkot, Ta'aseh shivat yamim. Ta'aseh, you have to, and says the Braita, Ta'aseh means you have to actually actively make the schach of the Sukkah. It can't be passively made. And says the Braita, Mikan Amru, listen well, Mikan Amru, Hidla alea, our Mishnah, Hidla alea et hagefen, if you spread the leaves and the branches of your vine, when it's attached to the ground, you let your vine grow on top of the schach prior to Sukkot. Ve'et hadalat, or pumpkins, different vegetations. Ve'et hakisus, ve'sichech al gaban, and then they're attached to the ground, and you put schach on top of them to complete your schach, psula, right? Hechidami. Says, wait a second. What is the scenario here? If you have not cut the wine, snipped the wine off the ground, then it's pasul not because of ta'aseh v'lo min ha'asui, it's pasul because of schach pasul, right? It's not ta'aseh v'lo min ha'asui. Ilema b'shelo kisasan, if you're talking about a scenario in which you have not snipped the wine off the ground yet, it's not because of ta'aseh v'lo min ha'asui that your sukkah is pasul. Your sukkah is pasul because you don't have enough schach. Because you can't count the wine as schach. The whole schach is pasul because it's attached to the ground. So says the Gemara, Ela b'shek sasan. Obviously, we're talking about the case that you, afterwards, snip and cut the branches, the vine, from the attachment to the ground. And yet, says the Braita, Katani psula. And still it says it is pasul, which means exactly against Rav. Rav says you snip them and you're good to go, right? 5 minutes before Chag HaSukkot, you just do the cut, all the branches are fresh, nice, you go to Chag HaSukkot, you're good to go. This Braita says that it's ta'aseh v'lo min ha'asui, exactly our discussion. It looks like a punch in the gut to what Rav had said. You see from here that we do not say that the cutting is considered the doing, right? So says the Gemara, the tiyufta the Rav. That would be really a punch in the gut. That would be a tiyufta of the Rav. Says the Gemara, Avan Harav, Hachavayaskinan, the shalfinhu, shlufi, de lo min kras yadidhu. This is the case that Rashi says, you pulled it off, you put it back in on top, or you cut it evenly, like a 1 millimeter cut, sharp and nice and narrow, and from the onlooker looks at the branch and it looks attached, right? You can't see the cut, right? It's cut and it's exactly staying the way it was before. So you don't see the branch being detached from the ground. According to Tosfot, it's that you cut, but it is still hanging with its peel. Right? It's in your pictures that it was sent to you 2 days ago. It is still attached a little bit. It's dead. It's really halachically considered detached from the ground, but it is still, an onlooker would see it a little bit attached, hanging by a hair. Therefore, we don't say that that is considered a full asiyah. You remember, because we're saying in Rav that the cutting is the doing, is the ta'aseh of the sukkah. But that has to be an obvious ta'aseh. So if you have something that no onlooker could tell that this has been cut, even though that actually has been cut, it's not good enough. So that's the answer the Gemara gives. But obviously, this is answered only for the second question of the Gemara, right? The first question about the tzitzit still stays as a very powerful question, because the Braita says clearly that if you put the tzitzit and then you cut it, it's pasul. And that, we don't have an answer. That's what Gemara is going to acknowledge right now. Says the Gemara, mikol makom, still, tela'an v'acharkach pasak is kasha. The Braita of tzitzit, that you put them on the baguette and then you snip the fringes, the tzitziyot, still is going to be a question on Rav, and the Gemara ends up saying kasha. You're correct, that stays questionable, which again, we've discussed many times. Kasha means the Gemara has an answer to give, but it's not a gishmak answer, it's not a good answer. The Gemara does just rather not say the answer. Sometimes it's better to live with a good question than a bad answer. So the Gemara leaves it as that, but it's not tiyufta. Tiyufta is a bomb kasha, that there's no answer. Perhaps in tiyufta, that's really like a checkmate. So there are 3 different levels of how the Gemara states a question. This is the lowest level, but nevertheless, the Gemara leaves this shver list, this sarich iyun, and we go on. Says, sorry?
Is there Rashi on kasha?
Not that it's going to explain this this specific question, but always in Shas as a rule, when the Gemara leaves something as kasha, it means I have an answer to give, but I rather just leave this and go to the next topics. Lema ketanai. Now the Gemara says, this machloket that we have been discussing the whole time of Rav and Shmuel, it's really, Rav and Shmuel are the first generation of Amoraim. Says the Gemara, this is really machloket Tanaim. This whole thing of Rav and Shmuel, of whether or not you need to move it, cut it, it's taseh or minasu, it's machloket Tanaim. Says the Gemara, how do I know that? Because we learned, and this is Gemara that's going to be discussed later on in Daf Lamed Gimel Amud Aleph in our Masechta. Avar veliketan pasul. Divrei Rabbi Shimon bar Yehosadak. We're talking about a scenario that morning of Chag Sukkot, the first day of Sukkot, you go to do your nanuim, and you bump into the rabbi. Rabbi takes one look at you, one look at your arba minim, and you see his eyebrows go up, which is not a good sign. Why? Because you have your beautiful lulav, you have your beautiful arava, and your magnificent etrog, and your hadassim also are good, but there's a problem with them. The Gemara there discusses that hadassim, even though that they are meshulash, even though that they are technically kasher, if they have the berries growing on them, right, and those berries are more than the leaves, is pasul. Right? That's what the Gemara says. Now the question is, there's nothing wrong with a hadassim. Had you come yesterday, Erev Sukkot, I would just, pick all the berries and you'll be good to go. You can't do that on Yom Tov, right? Either because it's tikkun mareh, it's bakeh patish, whatever turning something pasul to kasher on Yom Tov you don't want to do, right? But the question is, let's say you did it, right? When the rabbi left, you just figured, I'm going to make this kasher. I'm not going to spend so much money. I'm going to, have my own set. So on Yom Tov, you're not supposed to do it, but avar veliketan. You were over, you did the wrong thing. The question is it kasher or not? Is my set of arba minim kasher or it's not kasher? So says the Gemara, avar veliketan pasul. Divrei Rabbi Shimon bar Yosadak. Rabbi Shlomo says it's not pasul. You cannot deal with it anymore. Chachamim machshirin. Chachamim say no, it's kasher. You did what you're not supposed to do that. But after all, it's still kasher now. So says the Gemara, let this be a machloket Tanaim that is aligned with machloket Rav and Shmuel. How so? Savruat de kula alma lulav sarich eged, v'yarfinan lulav misuka. We are going through this with two assumptions, says the Gemara. Assumption number one is that when we tie our lulav hadassim and aravot, that is a must. That's a must, and you can't just hold in your hand lulav, hadas, and arava. You have to tie them together. That's assumption number one. Without a tie, you're not good, right? Assumption number two is that we say ta'aseh v'lo min ha'asui in lulav as well. Now, you say, why not? Because it doesn't say ta'aseh. The reason that by sukkah and by sisit we say ta'aseh v'lo min ha'asui is because the pasuk actually says, do it. It says, Chag HaSukkot ta'aseh shivat yamim. You should make Chag HaSukkot shivat yamim. By tzitzit it says the same thing. It's the language of asiyah that prompts us to think ta'aseh v'lo min ha'asui. By lulav it doesn't say ta'aseh. It doesn't. But it is part of Chag HaSukkot, so maybe Chag HaSukkot ta'aseh, it includes all of the inyanim of Chag HaSukkah. So therefore, we're going through this set. Gemara says, I'm telling you from the beginning already, we have these two assumptions. Assumption number one, you must have an eged, you must have a bundle for your arba minim. Assumption number two is that we drag and apply the concept of ta'aseh v'lo min ha'asui not just for the building of the sukkah, but for all the mitzvot of the sukkah. So therefore, your hadassim can't be ta'aseh v'lo min ha'asui either. Now that's very interesting, because just like we spoke about the schach a minute ago, that the schach is on my sukkah, just the problem, there's a side issue which is attached to the ground, so it's schach pasul, and I snip it, and according to Rav, that's kasher. Here also I should be able to apply that I have this beautiful meshulash hadas. There's a side problem with it, with the berries, so I pick them, and then we're good to go. Right? That is considered the asiyah. And Shmuel would say, well, that's not asiyah because you took something that was pasul and you passively, not actively, made it kasher, and that is the problem. So says the Gemara.
You're saying accidentally picked off the berries?
Not accidentally. It means if I have an egget, if I have a bundle of my three species bundled together, I have to bundle them when they are kasher. Here I bundled them. They're not kasher because the hadas is pasul. Then I made the whole bundle kasher, not by bundling it, but by just picking some berries. It's passively. I did something else and I made the bundle kasher. So that's ta'aseh v'lo min ha'asui. Just like having the schach on top of my sukkah and then snipping the attachment to the ground. Same exact thing. I snipped the berries here. Mamash identical to that. So Gemara says, I found a case that Rabbi Shlomo Yisraeli is arguing with Chachamim. This is a Mishnaic work. It's a machloket Tanaim. So really, machloket Rav and Shmuel is machloket Chachamim and Rabbi Shlomo Yisraeli, and that would be amazing based on these two assumptions. The Gemara says, well, no, because those two assumptions you made are very, very not pashut. Says the Gemara. Let's learn this together. The man de machzar savar, we're assuming that the one that says this bundle is kasher when you pick the berries, savar amrinan gabe sukkah kisisatan zu hasyatan, holds like Rav. So it turns out to say that Chachamim actually hold like Rav, surprisingly, that we say kisisatan zu yasiyatan, that when you snip it, that's considered doing already. Here also, snipping the berries is doing the bundle, so therefore it's kasher. Lulav nami amrinan lekitatan zu yasiyatan. It will be the same exact by the berries of my bundle of lulav. Uman the pasal, and the one that holds is pasul. Savar lo amrinan gabe sukkah kisatan zu yasiyatan. He holds that by sukkah, it's like Shmuel. He holds that by sukkah, snipping it is not good because I haven't done anything to the schach. It's passive. It's not active ta'aseh. And says the Gemara, v'gabel lulav nami, that would be identical to the shita of Rabbi Shimon ben Yehosadak, that by our bundle of lulav says it's pasul if you pick the berries after bundling it. Lo amrina lekitatan zu yasadan, because the snipping of the berries is not considered doing for the bundle. It's already bundled. It was pasul, and now you are passively making it, turning into kasher. It's not good enough. Lo amrinan lekitatan zu yasadan. That's the suggestion of the Gemara, right? Adkan until here was the suggestion. The Gemara says, look, I found a machloket Tanaim which seems to be identically relevant to this machloket Rav and Shmuel. So really, let's suggest that Rav and Shmuel are not creating this machloket. Just Rav holds like Chachamim, Shmuel holds like Rabbi Shlomo Yisraeli, and that's it. Gemara says, no. Lo. The kula alma lo amrinan gabe sukkah kesisatan zu yasiyatan. You know what? Really, everybody agrees. When we talk about schach of the sukkah, everyone agrees that we don't say kitzisatan zu yasiyatan. Everyone holds that if you have the vine grown on top of your schach and then you snip it, it's pasul. Everyone agrees with that. Is that and yet you have the machloket in later on in the Gemara in Amud Gimel of Rabbi Shimon ben Yehosadak and Chachamim, and you know what the pshat is in their machloket? Who told you that by lulav we have ta'aseh v'lo min ha'asui? Who says? It doesn't say ta'aseh. That is exactly the machloket of Tanaim later on. One of them holds you say ta'aseh v'lo min ha'asui by lulav, and you have to actively make it just like sukkah. So therefore, when it says you should make sukkah, chag sukkot ta'aseh shiv'at yamim, it's extended on all the mitzvot of sukkah. And the other one holds, no. If you make it kasher before you bundle it, or you bundle it before you make it kasher, makes zero difference. As long as you end up with a bundle that's kasher, you're good to go. There is no prohibition of ta'aseh v'lo min ha'asui by lulav. That's the machloket.
It doesn't matter when you bundle it?
Correct. Because it would only matter when you bundle it if you have to have a chronology, which is ta'aseh v'lo min ha'asui. Right? If I didn't have ta'aseh v'lo min ha'asui by Sukkot, would anybody care if I snipped it afterwards? No. You end up with the schach kasher on top of my sukkah, you're good to go. Here the only problem is that we don't have ta'aseh v'lo min ha'asui by lulav. So says the Gemara, that's exactly the machman, the machshar, the one that holds is kasher, this bundle is kasher. Savar, he holds lo yarfinan lulav misukkah. We don't learn lulav from sukkah. So your bundle could be made before you make it kasher, chazak baruch lechatchila, no problem. Uman the pasil, and Rabbi Shimon ben Yehosadak, who says your bundle is pasul because you bundled it before you picked the berries, he holds yalfinan sukkah, lulav misukkah. He holds that we do learn lulav from sukkah, and therefore, when you bundle the lulav, all of the three species should be kasher already. So if you bundled it before you picked the berries, and then only afterwards you picked your berries, the bundle is pasul, because it was made indirectly by picking the berries, not the moment that you bundled it. And therefore it's pasul. That's one answer, says the Gemara. Or I could suggest a second answer. Ve'ibait ema isevira lan, the lulav sarich eged I could tell you that everyone agrees that we do learn lulav from sukkah. Everyone agrees that we learn lulav. But you know what the machloket is? Who said that everyone agrees that you have to have a bundle? Maybe you could just hold a lulav and hadassim and aravot in your hand like this, without any ties, without any knots, and it's kasher to go. Who says that you need egged on the lulav? Who says? Says the Gemara, I actually show this to you as a machloket. Umor savar, the one that holds, more savar, this machloket here is that one of them holds sarich egged, that lulav needs a bundle, needs a tie. Umor savar, and the other one holds en sarich egged. It doesn't need a bundle, it doesn't need a tie. And this is really an already existing machloket tanaim, the Tanya we learned in the Braita. Lulav ben agud ben sheno agud, last narrow line, that lulav, whether you tied it or even if it's not bundled at all, kasher. It's kasher. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, agud kasher sheno agud pasul. Rabbi Yehuda says, no. You need lulav to be bundled. So it's really machloket tanaim already. And if I don't need lulav to be tied, is it a problem for me to take the berries after it's tied?
Not at all.
No, because I don't even need the bundle. I could do whatever I want. Says the Gemara, my Tama, the Rabbi Yehuda now. The Gemara says, once we mentioned this, what is the reason of Rabbi Yehuda? Because Rabbi Yehuda learns lekicha me'agudat ezov. He learns gezerah shava from Yetziat Mitzrayim, from the night before they went out of Mitzrayim. They had to put the blood on the doorpost. Do you remember that? How do you put the blood on the doorpost? Says the Gemara. You take agudat ezov. You take a bundle of ezov. You dip it in the blood of Korban Pesach, and you use that as a brush to put the blood on your doorpost. Right? That's what it says. Ketiv hatam, second wide line. Ulkachtem agudat ezov. Over there it says the word ulkachtem agudat ezov. You will take a bundle of ezov. Uchtiv hacha. And guess where else it says ulkachtem? By the Arba Minim. It says exact same language. Ulkachtem lachem beyom harishon. That you take these 4 species together. So malehalan be'agudah, just like over there by Yetziat Mitzrayim, by the blood of Korban Pesach, it must be an agudah because it says agudat ezov. Agudah is a bundle. Here also needs to be in a bundle. And Rabbanan say no. We don't learn it from there. Rabbanan lekicha belekicha lo yalfinan. We don't learn the gezerah shava at all. Now, Keman azlaha the Tanya, the Gemara says, once you're at this, I found the third shita over here, which seems to be very perplexing because the third shita is, it's lachatchila to make a bundle for the species, but it's not a necessity, right? That's like nobody. Chachamim say, you don't need it. Rabbi Yehuda says you absolutely need it. Without it, it's pasul. Now I found the third one that says, well, you should do it, but it's not pasul if you didn't do it, right? Seems to be a third shita. So, Keman azlaha the Tanya, we learned the Braita, lulav mitzvah leogdo. Lulav, hadas, and arava, it's mitzvah to bundle them together. Ve'im lo agado, but if you didn't bundle them together, you just held them in your hand together, says the Gemara, still is fine, kasher. Rabbi Yehuda, if it's Rabbi Yehuda, says the Gemara, can't be. Kilo agado amai kasher. If you don't bundle it, it's pasul. Rabbanan, and if it's Rabbanan, amai mitzvah. If it's Rabbanan, why it's a mitzvah? It's a commandment to do it. Why? Says the Gemara, no, leolam Rabbanan. It is the shita of Rabbanan. There's no third shita. It really is the same shita as Rabbanan. Umishum shenemar ze li vanvehu. This is a mitzvah of ze keli vanvehu, which means when we says ve'anvehu, the Gemara darshins, Masechet Shabbat, other places, hitna'eh lefanav b'mitzvot. You want to do the mitzvot in a glorified, beautified way. So the nicest way is, how nice is it when you have a lulav and thing is sticking out here, everything is flying off. It's not nice. When you nicely set them up, you tie them together, it's a bundle, it's nice, beautiful. That is a glorifying of the mitzvot. The Gemara says, you learn from here that you should have a talit na'eh, you should have a sefer Torah na'eh, All the things that you buy should be beautiful and nice. And the Gemara says, Hidur mitzvah shlish. You add a third of money that you would otherwise spend to make it a nicer mitzvah. So this is part of hitna'el fanav b'mitzvot, and that is the end of this sugya. Now, next sugya is going to be one of the most fascinating parts of the first parak of Masechet Succah. We're actually going to get into the machloket Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Akiva, whether we do Sukkot because they made huts in the midbar for 40 years, or is it because of Araneh Kavod? And it's a fascinating discussion, which we're going to Be'ezat Hashem start tomorrow morning.